Family Moomintroll by Tove Jansson, read by Sue Swallow. Chapter 3, in which the muskrat has a terrible experience, how the Moomin family discover Hattifatna's island, where the Hemulan has a narrow escape, and how they survive the great thunderstorm. Next morning, the muskrat went out as usual with his book to lie in the hammock. He just got comfortable when the string broke and he found himself on the ground. "Unpardonable!" exclaimed the muskrat, unwinding the rug from his legs. "Oh dear," said Moomin Papa, who was watering his plants. "I hope you didn't hurt yourself." "It isn't that," said the muskrat gloomily, sucking his moustache. "The earth can crack and fire can come down from heaven for all I care. That sort of thing doesn't disturb me. But I do not like to be put into a ridiculous situation. It isn't dignified for a philosopher." "But I'm the only one that saw it happen," protested Moomin Papa. "Well, that's bad enough," said the muskrat. "You will remember all that I have been exposed to in your house. Last year, for example, a comet fell on us. It was nothing, but as you remember, I sat on your wife's chocolate shape. It was the deepest insult to my dignity, and sometimes your guests put hairbrushes in my bed. A particularly stupid joke, not to mention your son, Moomintroll." I know," interrupted Moomin Papa miserably, "but there's no peace in this house, and sometimes string wears out with the years, you know." "It must not," said the muskrat. "If I had killed myself, or of course, it would not have mattered. But imagine if your young persons had seen me. Now, however, I intend to retire to a deserted spot and live a life of loneliness and peace, giving up everything. I have made up my mind once and for all." Moomin Papa was impressed. He said, "Where will you go?" "To the cave," said the muskrat. "Nobody can interrupt my thoughts with stupid jokes there. You may bring me food twice a day, but not before 10 o'clock. "Good," said Moomin Papa, bowing. "And shall we bring you some furniture too?" "Yes, you can do that," said the muskrat more kindly. "But very simple things. I realise that you mean well, but that family of yours really is too much for me." So the muskrat took his book and his rug and wandered slowly off towards the cliffs. Moomin Papa sighed to himself. Then he went on watering his plants and soon forgot all about it. When the muskrat arrived in his cave, he was very pleased with everything. He spread out the rug on the sandy floor and sat down on it and began to think. He continued to do that for about 2 hours. All was quiet and peaceful, and through the crack in the roof the sun shone softly into his hiding place. Sometimes he moved slightly when the sun slid away from him. "Here I shall stay for ever and ever," he thought. "How unnecessary to run about and chatter, to build a house and cook food and collect possessions." He looked contentedly around his new house, and then he caught sight of the hobgoblin's hat, which Moomintroll and Snufkin had hidden in the darkest corner. "Oh, the waste paper basket," thought the muskrat to himself. "Oh, so here it is. That'll come in useful." Oh dear. He thought for a little while longer and decided to sleep for a bit. He rolled the blanket, put his false teeth in the hat so they wouldn't get sandy. Then he slept peacefully and happily. In Moomin House, they had pancakes for luncheon, big yellow pancakes with raspberry jam. There was porridge from the day before as well, but nobody wanted it, so they decided to save it for the next morning. "Today I feel like doing something unusual," said Moomin Mama. "The fact that we got rid of that awful hat is something that ought to be celebrated. And besides, one gets so tired of everlastingly sitting in the same place." "That's quite true, my dear," said Moomin Papa. "We'll go on an excursion somewhere." "What?" "We've been everywhere already. There isn't anywhere new," said the Hemulan. "But there must be," said Moomin Papa, "and if there isn't, then we'll make somewhere. Stop eating now, children. We'll take the food with us." "Can't we eat what's already in our mouths?" said Sniff. "Don't be silly, dear," said Moomin Mama. "Collect everything you want to take with you quickly, because Father wants to start at once. But don't take anything unnecessary. We can write a note to the muskrat so that he knows we're here." "Bless my tail," burst out Moomin Papa and put his hand to his forehead. "I'd completely forgotten. We should have taken food and furniture to him in the cave." "In the cave!" screamed Moomintroll and Snufkin at the same time. "Yes, the string of the hammock gave out," said Moomin Papa. "So the muskrat said he couldn't think any more and that he would give up everything. You put brushes in his bed, and I don't know what, so he went to the cave." Moomintroll and Snufkin went very pale and looked at each other in horror. "The hat," they thought. "Well, it doesn't matter very much," said Moomin Mama. "We'll go on an excursion to the beach and we'll take the muskrat's food to him on the way." "The beach is so ordinary," said Sniff. "Can't we go somewhere else?" "Be quiet, children," said Moomin Papa severely. "Mamma wants to bathe. Now come along." So Moomin Mama hurried off to pack. She collected blankets, saucepans, birch bark, a coffee pot, masses of food, suntan oil, matches, and everything you can eat out of or with. She packed it all. An umbrella, warm clothes, tummy ache medicine, an egg whisk, cushions, a mosquito net, bathing drawers, that's like a bathing suit, and a tablecloth in her bag. She bustled to and fro, racking her brains for anything she'd forgotten, and at last she said, "Now it's ready. Oh, how lovely it will be to have a rest by the sea." Moomin Papa packed his pipe and fishing rod. "Well, are you all ready?" he asked. "Are you sure you haven't got anything? All right, let's start." They set off in a procession towards the beach. Last of all came Sniff, dragging 6 little toy boats behind him. "Do you think Muskrat has got up to anything?" whispered Moomintroll to Snufkin. "I certainly hope not," Snufkin whispered back, "but I'm feeling a bit anxious." At that moment, they all stopped so suddenly that the Hemulan nearly got his fishing rod in his eye. "Who screamed?" Moomin Mama burst out in a laugh. The whole wood shook with a wild howling, and something or someone came galloping towards them on the path, growling with terror and rage. "Hide!" said Moomin Mama. "There's a monster coming." But before anyone had time to move, the monster turned out to be the muskrat, with staring eyes and bristling whiskers. He waved his paws and made incoherent sounds that nobody could understand, but it was clear that he was very angry or frightened, or angry because he was frightened. Then he turned his tail and he fled. "Oh, what has happened to the muskrat?" said Moomin Mama anxiously. "He was always so calm and dignified." "Oh, to get into such a state because the hammock cord broke," said Moomin Papa, shaking his head. "Oh." "I think he was angry because we forgot to take food to him," said Sniff. "Now we can eat it ourselves." They continued their way to the beach, a bit disturbed in their thoughts, but Moomintroll and Snufkin sneaked off in front of the others and took a shortcut to the cave. "We daren't go in through the door. Perhaps the thing is still there," said Snufkin. "We'll climb up on top and look down through the crack in the roof." Quietly, they crawled up, worming their way like worms towards the opening in the roof, and they looked down into the cave. There stood the hobgoblin's hat, and it was empty. The rug was thrown in one corner and the book in another. The cave was deserted, but everywhere in the sand there were strange footprints to be seen, as if someone had been dancing and jumping about. "It wasn't the muskrat's paws that made those footprints," said Moomintroll. "I wonder if it was some other paws," said Snufkin. "It looks awfully weird." They clambered down again and looked nervously about, but nothing alarming happened. They never found out what had frightened the muskrat so terribly, because he refused to talk about it. I wonder if it was something to do with its teeth. Meanwhile, the others had arrived at the beach. They all stood in a bunch down by the water's edge, chattering and waving their arms. "They found a boat," said Snufkin. "Come on, let's run and see." It was true. A lovely big sailing boat, complete with oars and fishing tackle and painted in white and mauve. "Whose is it?" said Moomintroll, panting, when he finally reached them.